don't go away. This is going to be a very exciting program because I think you'll enjoy meeting the people we have with us today as we discuss that very important topic that keeps us all together as family, the topic of being grandparents. Come with us on Austin Faith Dialogue.
This is Austin Faith Dialogue, a public affairs program discussing the important crossroad of religion in life, produced by Austin Metropolitan Ministries in cooperation with KTBC TV. Austin Faith Dialogue highlights the interaction of the religious community with the social and cultural issues throughout our area. Now, today's edition of Austin Faith Dialogue.
There are those observers of our contemporary society and culture who say that one of the problems we are having in this culture is fragmentation, that families aren't whole and together, that there's a lacking of the presence of grandparents in people's lives. Well, on Austin Faith Dialogue today, we're going to help with that situation. We're going to talk about grandparenting, and we have a grandmother with us, a grandparent by the name of Lurleen Thompson. She is a resident here in Austin, and she's going to talk about her life experience and what it means to be a grandparent. And we also have a granddaughter with us, Kristen Hayden. And she's going to share with us what it means to have grandparents in her life. Lurleen, Kristen, thanks a lot. You really, it's exciting to have you here on Austin Faith Dialogue.
Thank you.
Lurleen, you're a grandparent. You are, I'll tell all the viewers, you're going to be 89 on November the 28th. And you love life, don't you? You enjoy this life experience.
I do, for sure.
We want you to share with our viewing audience some of the things that you think are important in the process of being a grandparent. I understand that you're not shy, that you're willing to tell whoever will listen to you about some of the ideas you have regarding parenting and grandparenting. You have a grandson, and you talked to him one time about yoga. That to me is a little bit strange to have a grandparent talk to a grandchild about yoga, but tell us that story, would you please?
Well, I have two grandsons. And the younger one is the one that, when I came to live with the family after I had lost my vision, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
After I had lost my vision, I came to live with the family, and this grandson
You know what we're going to do?
communicated so well.
Lurleen, what we're going to do is we're going to have you do that exercise, you know, what you were showing me before we came on, where you go like this and clear that throat out and get it all ready, the exercise you lead over at Westminster.
Okay.
Anyway, the grandson came to be with you?
No, I came into their home.
I see.
And I had become very interested in yoga and had gotten records. And so when I presented them to this grandson, David, he was fascinated. And it was interesting. He was a big boy. But I tell you, you wouldn't have known that he was big because he was able to do all those different positions of yoga with such dexterity that
How old would you have been, Lurleen, then, when you came into their home to teach David yoga?
How old was I?
Yes, right.
Well, I was 75.
75 years old.
Yeah.
And what was the reaction of that grandchild to having the grandma say to him, you know, that's not the typical grandma image we have, saying to a grandson, I'm going to teach you some yoga. What was David's reaction to that?
Well, he was delighted.
Ah.
And he was so good at it. And at that time, I did pretty good at it. But not as well as he did, of course. And but I communicated well with both my grandsons. And that was helpful in the first place.
And that's one reason you're on Austin Faith Dialogue, because I've been told you're a good communicator and that
Well,
you're willing to share your thoughts and ideas about a lot of issues in life. And one of them must be that fitness and exercise is important all the days of your life.
Well, I still do it, you know. I exercise twice a week, and I walk every day. I walk about 2 miles every day. And I stay busy. And one thing that I do at the Manor, I live at Westminster Manor, and it's a good place to live. And we have a group that meets and study the great books. So that takes up a lot of time. But
staying fit then in body and mind is really important.
absolutely.
Kristen,
Absolutely.
what about you? You have sets of grandparents. Grandparents lived here in Austin, and grandparents live in Waco. What have you noticed about your grandparents? What are some of the important things that they've given to you as a young person growing up, getting ready to go off to Southwest Texas State University, having graduated from Pflugerville High School? What have your grandparents given to you?
Well, they're always there to listen to me when I have anything to talk about, more so than my parents. I think I feel more comfortable with them.
That's interesting.
They're really encourage everything I do, and you know, they're just always there.
Kind of a support system for you. You feel more complete as a person because you know your grandparents are there, part of your life. Is that right?
Yes, yes, definitely.
Lurleen, you talked about exercising, and I know that you do some bowling, but we have a video clip that our producer Steve Ross went over to the manor and took this of the exercise group, and we want you to tell a little bit about these exercises. I see them moving their heads around. What do they do?
Well, we start out, when I lead it, we start out stretching. And then we put our heads back and say the vowels.
You mean that's the exercise, the throw, when you go
yeah.
A-E-I-O-U, you do that?
That's right.
Do that for me.
A-E-I-O-U. A-E-I-O-U. So that's supposed to loosen you up. And I need it now. But then we get into, you know, all sorts of arm exercises, and we go from our head to our feet, really. And it's in using exercise sitting down, you might think it wasn't very effective, but it is, because you can really accomplish a lot in just loosening up.
You know what I think, Kristen, as Lurleen tells us this, and I watch on the monitor, I think exercising is important for all ages. I'm a believer in exercise, and I try to exercise every day. But it's a little hard, isn't it? You just graduated in high school, Kristen, and you're getting ready to go off to college, and I think you're going to face some real difficulty in finding time to exercise.
You have to make time.
Yes,
Yeah.
I plan to do that.
I think that's important in a lot of respects. You make time.
In other words, you prioritize this whole idea of
do.
exercise.
Absolutely.
Now, would you say that's true, Lurleen, for all ages of people, including Kristen?
Yes.
And then as people get older, you know, what happens when people are like myself? We're parents, we have children involved in school doing all kinds of things, and it becomes a very difficult thing to say, I'm going to find time to exercise. We can kind of rationalize and say, well, I'm not going to find exercise. But I hear you saying that to stay fit as a person, whether you are a grandchild, whether you're a parent or a grandparent, exercise is important, exercise of the body. And it can be done, Lurleen, seated, or it can be done standing.
That's right. That's right. But when people get older, and we've got a lot of people at the manor that wouldn't be able to stand up and do a lot of this, but they get the good out of it. But you know, the habit of taking charge of your own life is an important thing. We have dominion. Most of us just don't use it. And it's dominion, and whether you're young and you're learning to study, and you know, really priorities. Put them where they belong. You just don't.
I think that's a good spiritual point, and particularly for Kristen as a grandchild to hear a grandmother say, you have dominion over yourself. You ought to be in charge of yourself. But how, grandmother, do we go about doing that? How can one decide to do that?
Well, I don't know. I think maybe I was a little late in getting started, because I didn't really have dominion over myself for many years. That is, I didn't really follow a pattern or a program. But after I got older, and I began to really realize it's up to me. When you cease to be needed, when people get to the place in their lives that they're not really needed, you have to fill up that vacancy. You just can't let it be a vacant spot.
That's such an important point. Kristen, do your grandparents, do they feel needed? Do their lives have that kind of sense that there's a purpose for them of being alive?
Oh, yes. And my grandparents are always on the go, always trying to help people through their church.
They stay active in their religious community.
Oh, yes.
And in other ways they express themselves, so that the grandparents who are watching this program can really make a difference in the life of their grandchild. but not only their grandchild, right, Lurleen?
That's right.
Be involved in others and have other interests, like Kristen mentioned the church. What are some other things that a grandparent could do to feel that sense of importance? You know, after you've raised your kids and you're no longer working full-time, do you think, Lurleen, there's kind of a lull in people's lives? They wonder, well, why am I still here?
I'm sure a lot of people feel that way, but you know, I'm definitely of the opinion that we're here for a purpose, and to learn what this purpose is. And with me, it was to learn more about who I am and why I'm here. I spent 8 years really with a study, you might say, just all alone. It's not going to a class, even though I enjoy our great books, but it hasn't anything to do with this business of learning a way of living.
You mean to say you were 81 when you started this 8-year study? Is that what you're telling me? Or are you
Yes.
in the middle of that 8-year study?
Yeah.
And in this 8-year
Well, no, it wasn't the beginning of my study, but I've really dedicated myself for 8 years.
to
And,
learning the mystery of why you are here?
That's right. Yeah.
Well-
And I often think of the passage in the Bible where it says, "Great is the mystery of godliness."
Uh-huh.
You know, and it is a mystery. And I think most of us don't settle down to really getting into that until we're older.
You know, I want to talk about that a little bit later on in the program, so Kristen, don't let me forget that, okay? I want to talk about this mystery. Don't leave me hanging here. I want to find out what, you know, I'm younger, and I'd like to know that mystery now if I could, okay? So we want to explore that. But tell me also, I'm still interested in this exercise. You say you walk, you lead exercise at Westminster, but also you bowl, I understand.
I bowl.
Now, your eyes are not good. Is that correct, Lurleen?
Well, I don't even see the food on my plate. That's how badly I see, and I can't see your face.
You can't see my face.
But, you know, I learned to bowl after I was blind, and legally blind, that is. And with this macula, I do have some peripheral vision, but not much. And so when I bowl and my partners are willing to tell me if I don't throw a strike, which I don't do it too often, I know where to stand for certain combinations of spares. So I don't do badly.
You know, you give me so many thoughts and ideas. I know where to stand. How crucial that is for life, to know where to stand. And a lot
Absolutely.
of us,
Absolutely.
a lot of us don't know where to stand. But in bowling, how did you learn to bowl? Who taught you to bowl?
Well, Rich, my son, took me bowling. And when he said, "Let's go bowling," I said, "Rich, I don't know anything about bowling." And he said, "It's about time you learned."
How old were you?
I was 75.
You taught yoga at 75 and you learned to bowl at 75. That was a big year for you, Lurleen.
Well, it wasn't the beginning of yoga, but it was of bowling. And bowling is the one thing outside that I do, you know, and I need something outside to do. But in the manner, there are things, we have a lot of entertainment.
Well, don't leave bowling yet, Lurleen. I want to talk a little bit further. What are scores? What have you bowled?
Well, about the third year after I started bowling, I had 5 games of over 200.
Yeah. Kristen, what do you think of that?
Yeah.
Now, Kristen and I have bowled together before, and she knows I'm a pretty good bowler. You know, I have to be a little humble about it, but I'm pretty good, Kristen, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Well, whether you bowl well or not, if you enjoy it, that's a big thing. And I do. I thoroughly enjoy bowling.
in other words, you have fun.
Yes, I have fun.
When you're exercising, you have a good time, you have some fun, is that right?
I enjoy that.
And it seems...
I enjoy most things. I really do.
And what you're telling our Austin Faith Dialogue audience is that when you're a grandparent, you can have some fun.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And Kristen?
And, you know, I think that what I can give to my grandchildren now, if I can stay alert and interested and interesting, what else can you give to grown men?
Well, I'll tell you something. The word is not if. You will stay alert.
Yeah.
And because you are alert, you know, you'll share a lot with us and our Austin Faith Dialogue audience. And we're going to come back and we're going to talk more about grandparenting and being a grandchild and the thing grandchildren can learn. But I also want to pursue this idea of the mysteries of life that you've learned as one who is on the verge of becoming 89. We're going to take a break, but stay with us on Austin Faith Dialogue.
Serving Austin means serving you. That has always been the primary goal of Austin Metropolitan Ministries. We are religion in action through the work of these organizations. Each plays a key role in making the capital city a better place to live, but we can't do it alone. Do you have some spare time, talents, or any resources that you can share? If you do, please call AMM at 472-7627 because serving Austin means serving you.
Hi, welcome back to Austin Faith Dialogue. I'm Carl Gronberg, host for the program, and we're having an exciting time talking about grandparenting and the importance of grandparents in the family unit, in society, and how we really are all interrelated to one another and how we can learn from one another. Kristen Hayden is with us. She's a graduate of Pflugerville High School and going to begin her first year at Southwest Texas State University. Kristen, you mentioned at the top of the program that one of the things that your grandparents give to you is this communication, that you love your parents, but you feel like you can maybe even communicate better with your grandparents. But your grandparents are of a different generation. What do you find your generation and their generation? Lurleen's over here giggling and laughing when I'm saying all of that. But hey, what are the differences that you maybe sense, and how do you deal with those differences? When I was younger, they talked about the generation gap, and I never really did believe a lot in that generation gap, but a lot of people did. If there is such a thing as a generation gap, how do you overcome that? What are some of the things that you, as a grandchild, deal with and with your grandparents?
Well, yes, we both have different views on things, but I just have to learn that, you know, they have their own opinion and I have mine, and you have to respect that. And you can't tell them that they're wrong, because, you know, that's what they've been brought up to believe, and that's what I've been brought up to believe. So
maybe you sense that on some issues, it's all right to have difference of opinion.
Yeah.
That grandchildren don't have to be zealots and try to convert their grandparents
No.
to their way of thinking. Maybe that's good for people to know, because we do have a lot of zealots in our society who are always trying to say that their way is right. But if grandparents and grandchildren are going to grow in that maybe God-given mutual respect, that it's important to be able to say, you're freed up to believe the way you want to believe, and this is the way I believe. But always, Kristen, to say, I love you.
Yeah.
And keep that firm in front of everybody, I love you. We may not agree on these issues, but I love you. I think it's important. Lurleen, how do you tie in with that? Do you think there's some truth in that?
Oh, yes. But one thing I've learned, you know, we don't really change anybody's mind. And that's not really up to me to change anybody's mind, to respect other people's opinions, and to just realize that you couldn't possibly expect a young person to understand what older people experience. How could they?
You know, I think that's a very important point, that we sometimes, because of our life experiences, expect our children or our grandchildren to be in the same place that we are, and they're not going to be there. Exactly.
That's right.
Well, you mentioned something to me before we went on air, that your relationship with your mother, grandmother, or grandparents were not alive, but your mother, I guess, you never understood really her aging process until you went
That is the truth. You know, when I was, I remember my mother used to talk about her mother that had died at 69, and my mother would say, you know, my dear mother, and I was 73 at the time, and I thought, I'm older than her mother was when she died.
Yes.
And my mother never realized my age. See, she didn't realize my age, and I didn't realize her age.
In other words, you think we get in some sort of time warp, that we maybe put our children into the age of what we want them to be, and it's hard for them to realize that they become adults and are dealing with, well, Kristen's mother works with me, and she was saying that it's kind of